6 hours a week is not going to be enough if you only have 2.5 months and you want the 175. Your competition who wants the 175, they're putting in at least minimum double that. This is Nina, and she's looking to improve from a 161 to a 175, studying only 6 hours a day over the next 2.5 months. My name is Steve Schwartz, and I've been teaching the LSAT for the past 20 years. Today, Nina's going to bring me her biggest LSAT challenges, and I'll help her address them as she looks to improve by at least 14 points. Tell me a little bit about where you're at right now. What's your most recent practice test score?
So most recently, I got a 161, which I was really excited about, but I put off applying for so long now. I'm like, might as well see how far I can go and see if I can do better before the next application cycle. So getting a little delusional, as I like to say it, and saying maybe I can break the 170s. Other people have done it, so why not? Why couldn't I?
Of course. Yeah, why not shoot for it?
Exactly. So that's kind of where I am now, is just trying to see how high I can get.
Yeah, let's see what we can go for. I mean, I saw in your application you're looking for a 175, right? So ideally, fingers crossed, you're shooting for a top score.
Yeah, I honestly, anything over 170, I would be just over the moon with.
Okay.
We'll see.
Let's see what we can do to make it happen. Now, when are you planning on taking the test?
I've rescheduled it for June.
Okay, so we've got about 2.5 months. How many hours per week are you able to put into your LSAT prep between now and then?
At least 6 hours a week. At the very least, I could do 6 hours a week. At max 11 if I did a longer session on a Saturday or Sunday, more than that.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand correctly. Minimum 6 hours over the course of 7 days?
Yes.
But you could potentially double that?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Because I work from 9 to 5, to get in at least an hour of studying a day during the week. So that's where that minimum comes from, just a minimum of an hour a day, and then give myself a rest day.
All right, so we'll dig more into that. We want a maximum score. We're going to want to put in a little bit more than the minimum time. Okay. We'll see where we can carve out some time for you. I gather from your background, are you working these days? What's your work schedule like?
I work Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
We've got maybe some time after work, some time on the weekends, maybe some time during the day?
Yeah, theoretically.
And you mentioned 161 was your most recent practice test score, and you were pretty excited by that. What's been your practice tests prior to that point like?
It would range everywhere from a 154 to a 157.
All right, so the mid 150s was where you were prior, and then we have this outlier recent result that indicates promise and potential. We want to ride that wave, keep getting better and better. Let's talk about one of the most common traps for high achievers on the LSAT. You know the material, but you're still getting questions wrong. Sound familiar? You read the explanation and nod along and then say, that makes sense. But then 3 days later, you make the exact same mistake on a similar question. The thing is, there's a big gap between intellectual understanding and execution on test day. Understanding why a strengthened answer is correct is totally different from spotting it in under 90 seconds with the timer ticking and your palms sweating. These are totally different situations and they require different skills. So if you feel like you know the LSAT cold, but your score is not improving, it's probably not about knowing more. It's about training your decision making under pressure. And this is why when we work with students, we don't just say do more questions. We look at how they're reacting under test day conditions. For example, are you rushing through the first 5 questions because they're easy, then missing one because of a silly misread? Are you spending 3 minutes on one reading comp question, looking at the same paragraph over and over? Are you changing your answers at the last second because you don't trust your gut? None of this is a content problem. These are all performance problems. And they're fixable, but only if you stop focusing on learning more and start practicing smarter. The LSAT doesn't care how many books you've read or how many videos you've watched. It rewards people who can apply what they know in real time when the stakes are real. So the next time you catch yourself saying, but I knew that, pause and ask instead, how can I train that instinct so it shows up automatically when it matters? That is the mindset shift that gets results. Okay, now, any particular weak areas on the test that you might want to dive into?
Most strongly supported and inference questions are where I find I typically get them wrong more often than not. If I had to think of a particular practice question, I'd say more than anything, my timing is where I really struggle, and just my reading comprehension while I'm underneath the time constraint. I have always thought I was a good reader, and then the more that I study for this test, the more that I realize how I take words for granted as I'm reading, and then going back in my private sessions with my tutor, does it say can or does it say could? And I misinterpreted what an answer choice was saying, and that would be why I got it wrong.
Okay, yeah, so reading comprehension and not making assumptions. Is it reading comprehension in reading comp, or is it reading comp in logical reasoning, or across the board?
In both. I take things for granted while reading across the board, or just I'll find myself like reading so fast, like I'll miss those key things.
Okay. Yeah, but in particular, the logical reasoning, most strongly supported inference, are those like the two biggest areas that you think you struggle with?
Those are the questions that I've been like lately noticing I'm struggling with.
Let's clear something up, because I see this way too often with smart, hardworking students. Your LSAT score is not a moral judgment. You're not a better person because you got a 175. You're not a failure because you scored a 151. You are not your score. But let me say this just as clearly, your score does reflect your strategy, your timing, your review process, and your test day execution. And that's actually great news, because those are all things that you can improve. What I see in Nina's journey is something I've seen thousands of times with students we work with. When the score drops or plateaus, their first instinct is to take it personally. Why can't I get this? Or what's wrong with me? And it spirals fast. Suddenly, you're studying from a place of guilt and anxiety instead of growth and curiosity. And that sort of mindset kills progress. So here's the shift I want you to try. Stop asking, why am I stuck at this score? And start asking, what system got me to this score and how do I adjust and improve it? Maybe your pacing's off by 3 minutes. Maybe you're reviewing answers but not reviewing why you were attracted to the wrong ones. And maybe you're great at flaw questions but you're losing time on parallels every single time. Those issues are fixable, every single one of them. One of my coaches said it perfectly the other day. Treat your LSAT prep like a lab experiment, not a courtroom trial. You're not here to be judged, you're here to iterate. You try something, you measure the result, and adjust. That's how every great score gets made. So if you're watching this and you've tied your score to your self-worth, I want you to pause and breathe. Then ask yourself, what's the next variable I can adjust today? That is where the power is. And would you say that the issue is more with accuracy or timing, or maybe both?
Probably both. Like I tend to be more accurate when I don't give myself any time constraints. And then of course, the moment you put a time constraint on it, that's where I tend to make more mistakes.
Okay. Yeah, so we got to make sure that you're getting them right, but also getting them right under test day conditions.
Right.
And what would you say is the breakdown of your untimed work versus timed work in terms of where you allocate your study time? Like, are you doing more questions by type or untimed drills, or are you doing more timed sections and exams?
I've been doing a lot of untimed stuff so far. I've been trying to start thinking about more times that, like, if I do like a shorter drill, trying to do like every question within like underneath a minute and a half. But majority of my practice has been untimed still.
Okay. And are you planning to transition that to more timed work as we get closer to the test?
I think eventually I'll definitely need to. Full transparency, I've also been considering applying for a accommodation. I don't want it if I don't need it, but just from conversations I've had with my doctors, they think that could be potentially helpful for me. So that's one thing, but I don't want to rely on that. And I'm almost 30 years old. Like I didn't need it throughout my primary or higher education. I was able to get through because I just struggle with staying focused. And then when you put a timer in front of my face, it's like the countdown, the pressure, like all I can think about is the time, and I can't think about the question, and I'll read it and then I'll read it again and read it again, and I like won't be able to focus. So it's kind of, sometimes it takes like having to get like a bit of a warm my brain up into the session, and then maybe the first two like I get wrong. It took me a bit to like engage, but then I'll do a lot better as the section goes on.
Okay, so a little bit of trouble getting warmed up. Timer and time constraint can pose an issue. Accommodations might help with that. You'll see what you end up doing there. One thing I'll just say right now is let's get that ironed out sooner rather than later, so that you can study with whatever your timing is ultimately going to be. To simulate test day, we got to know what test day is going to look like, right? So we got to know, are you doing standard timing or time and a half, double time, breaks, no breaks, whatever it's going to be. Let's talk about confidence. A lot of people think confidence on the LSAT is something you either have or you don't. Like it's some magical energy you just wake up with one day, you look in the mirror and go, yep, I'm gonna crush a 175 today. That's not how it works though. Confidence is not a vibe, it's a skill. And like any other skill on the LSAT, like spotting flaws, pacing, diagramming, confidence can be built, trained, and strengthened over time. When we work with students who've hit a plateau like Nina, what we often find isn't a lack of intelligence, not a lack of motivation or lack of information. It's that their mindset hasn't caught up with their progress. They're still approaching every question like, I hope I survive this, instead of, let's go find the flaw and crush it. And here's the weird part. That confidence shift doesn't usually come from another 20 hours of studying. It comes from doing one thing, noticing your own wins, like actually sitting down after a timed section and saying, hey, I got 22 out of 25 right and I finished on time. That is a win. Or I spotted a classic necessary assumption trap on question 17 without overthinking it. That sort of thing used to trip me up all the time. Now, you don't need to fake confidence, you need to prove it to yourself one pattern at a time. And look, you're gonna have bad days. That's fine. Even Kobe missed shots. But if you're reviewing every test like a scientist, not like a critic, you start to build a case for your own success. And once you believe in your ability to improve, you stop playing scared. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, I don't know if I can do this, pause and ask yourself, what have I already done that proves that I'm capable? Then go out and get one more small win. That's how real confidence is built, stacked one rep at a time. Now, how are you tracking your progress with all the work that you're doing? I saw your review sheet. I'm excited to dig into that with you. But aside from the review spreadsheet, what about just tracking progress in terms of, say, accuracy or practice test scores, anything like that?
So honestly, I also got the subscription to 7Sage. I like their module, basically. They have all the answer choices in there. It's kind of like Law Hub, but then they give you what the distribution on the answers on each particular question was, and they give you a full explanation of everything and a breakdown for each answer choice. So that's kind of where I've been tracking. Is just I'll go and I'll see what the accuracy was on a particular set, and they group it by question type. And I can also see my history on my practice tests that I've taken through there. Okay, so in your tracking of your progress, what have you revealed? Have you gotten any insights out of that in terms of where you stand accuracy-wise? In general, if I, out of a set of 10, I'll miss maybe 2 per section of 10. And I would say that's probably my average. Okay, excellent. So that means that you're roughly at 80% accuracy overall, which is pretty good. That definitely indicates potential to go beyond that 161. So I'm excited to see where we could take it. If we can help you get more accurate in terms of your reading comprehension, like we talked about, making sure you're fully understanding the stimulus or the passage, get you some improvement in those particular question types, most supported and inference.
Let's talk about what it really feels like to come back to LSAT prep after a break. You sit down with your notebook, crack open a practice test, and within 5 minutes, you're wondering if your brain leaked out during the time off. You're slower, you second guess everything, and you start thinking, wait, did I forget how to read? This is totally normal. In fact, when we help students who are coming off a break, whether it's 2 weeks, 2 months, or more, the very first thing we say is, expect to feel rusty. That's not a sign you're falling behind. That's just what happens when your LSAT muscle memory hasn't been flexed in a while. Now, here's what people get wrong. They treat rust like failure. They sit down to drill, get a bunch of questions wrong, and immediately spiral. They'll say things like, I lost it, or maybe I was never that good to begin with. Thing is, you didn't lose it, you just haven't used it in a while. It's kind of like going back to the gym after vacation. You don't expect to set a personal record your first day back. You stretch, you do a light warm-up, you ease in, same thing here. So if you're coming off a break, here's what you want to do. First off, start light. Don't jump into full sections cold. Start with short drills, just a few questions at a time to get your rhythm back. Second, review your old mistakes. Not to punish yourself, but to jog your memory. You want to think to yourself, oh yeah, that's why I fell for that trap answer. You want instant clarity. Next thing, you want to track the small wins. Even if it's just finishing 5 questions in 10 minutes without panicking, that itself is momentum and you want to celebrate it. Finally, give it 2 weeks to get back up to speed. You would be amazed at how quickly your brain snaps back once you stop beating yourself up and you start showing up consistently. And one more thing, remember that breaks happen. Life gets busy and work can pile up. Maybe you get sick. Maybe you lost motivation for a little while. This is all part of the process. What matters is how you come back, because every time someone comes back and re-engages with purpose, it's not starting over, it's compounding the foundation they already built. This is what we see over and over again with our students. Breaks are temporary, and progress resumes the moment that you do. So don't panic, don't punish yourself, just warm up, reset your expectations, and trust that the knowledge is still there, waiting to be reactivated.
Aside from that, what about in reading comprehension? Are there certain passage topics that you have more trouble with than others, or certain question types in reading comp?
Typically the legal ones, unfortunately, but somewhat predictably, I guess.
Okay, yeah, so the legal ones give you a little bit of trouble.
Yeah.
And in reading comp, what's your overall approach like when you come to approaching these passages or any others?
I try to just read for structure and understand how the passage has been, how the author has structured the passage and why. So I just try to keep that in mind, where do I first see their argument. Is it coming up like in the first paragraph? Are they delaying it until the last paragraph? I try to read, like, are they talking about giving us one viewpoint and then a contrasting viewpoint? Are they presenting like the background on something and then offering a solution? I try to like understand sort of how it's structured as I'm going through my initial read, and then like flag for key details and like author attitude, signifiers, things like that.
Okay, good. So you're reading for all the key structural elements. When it comes to transitioning from reading the passage to solving the questions, are you taking any notes? Are you highlighting or underlining, or is this all just happening in your head?
I typically like to highlight. I don't take really any notes, but I just highlight if I see like any sort of like conclusions or any sort of like major hints as to what the author's attitude on something would be. There's a good potential that they'll come up.
Okay, and you're using the highlighting tool in LawHub?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you're finding it works well for you?
It works.
Okay.
I want to say, like, to be fully honest, like, I think I carry a lot of shame around my current prep because I would to dedicate more time than I have. I've been doing this for years and it feels silly. And I also like question, I'm like, you talk about how you became obsessed with the LSAT, and like I always like to read like the things that you discuss in your emails and things, because I find it to be very motivating, but I struggle to like internally shift myself into that same like mindset. And it's not for lack of because I know I want to be an attorney. I know that that's what I want to do in the long term. It's just the actual like test itself is such a like hurdle in my mind, and I don't know how to shift my mindset. I want to just get past the test and I can't. I know that I need to take it seriously, and I'll get really into it for a week, and then I'll get fatigued or something will happen at work or like in my personal life, and then I'll fall off. And so I think my biggest hurdle is really like trying to overcome all of the external factors so that I prioritize my time with the test so that I can actually like see those improvements, because I know that it takes a lot of time to see small improvements. It's one thing to know that, and it's another thing to do it. And I think that's where I struggle the most.
Real quick, guys, a lot of you have been asking me how you can be featured in one of these LSAT study breakdowns and get feedback on your approach. The only way is to join one of my LSAT coaching programs. You could check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. And now, back to the show.
I think like, how do you get into that obsessive mindset? Like, how do you like train your brain to just like to focus and to make that your central priority?
That's a great question. And thank you for sharing this with me, because I think this is a larger meta issue where if we can solve this, everything else will fall into place, because you will just put in the time and do what needs to be done. Because, I'll tell you right here, honestly, 6 hours a week is not going to be enough if you only have 2.5 months and you want the 175, just because in part your competition who wants the 175, they're putting in at least minimum double that, right? Yeah. Nobody gets a 175 by accident. Right. And there's enough people out there obsessed with this who will put in the work, and they'll take those points and leave you with a lower score. Yeah. But you are able to carve out the time. You just haven't chosen to because other things come up. And that's okay. We can work around that. As for the question of how you become obsessed with things, I think in part it's a personality trait due to, what your parents tell you about what you have to achieve to be good enough, right? I mean, we all have different triggers and all different childhood things that we bring to the table, but if you can find a way to turn on the obsession, you can channel it in a positive direction. Now, I happen to be the kind of person who gets obsessed with things, and so I run with it and I try to find good ways to channel it. But for you, I mean, have you ever been obsessed with anything outside of the LSAT where you have been driven to put in the time to achieve something or practice something or learn something?
Yeah. I mean, I'll get like special interests in things. Part of the issue is that the LSAT's hard. Which is, if I think about like the hobbies that I've learned, that I've spent like an extra amount of time like delving into, I've always gotten into them because I've just found them to be like fun and interesting. And not that I don't find the LSAT interesting, but I do find it to be hard for me to like, it's not as fun as like reading about mushrooms, like and learning how to care for my plants.
Yeah, I hear you how it could be different. I mean, it's hard. Maybe it's not as accessible. Makes you feel dumb to get stuff wrong. But on the other hand, I'll tell you a couple of things that appeal to me about the LSAT that I think give you an access point from which to become obsessed. So in part, there are a set number of released exams, and there are actually a lot of them, right? There's 101 to 158 in the new format without logic games in LawHub. And so just kind of like you have the Pokemon gotta catch them all, or the Beanie Beanie Babies craze back in the 90s, the collectibles idea. Could you collect all the exams by completing all the exams? Just like there are a set number of mushrooms, but there are actually probably a lot of different varieties if you were to go down that rabbit hole, right? And so then you would say to yourself, can I learn all of the varieties? Can I study them all? Can I try to collect them all and go mushroom foraging or whatever it is, right? And so similarly with the LSAT, there's a complete set, but not everyone's going to work through all of them. They're all sitting there in Law Hub waiting for you to consume them. So for example, there are people, and you can also track yourself, right? You can track, I've completed X out of Y. I've completed 2 out of 58, 3 out of 58, 5 out of 58. For some people, they get obsessed with athletics. And so they think to yourself, can I beat my previous time? Can I lift more than I lifted in the past? How many rounds can I do in this period of time? And then you just look to beat your previous numbers. And so can you complete the exams? And can you beat your previous accuracy number? Or can you beat your previous time? Can you beat your previous raw score? So if you track the data, we talked earlier about the review sheet, we'll touch on that more, but there's the tracking progress. The reason I brought it up is because if you track your progress, you then collect the data to give yourself some motivation to reach that next level. And you also know what your baseline is. So you know, people have their personal record in athletics. Can you beat your previous personal best? Or can you match your previous average from the previous 3 to 5 attempts? If you go below it, that's a problem. You look at why, but you're always looking to do better.
That makes sense.
And then the other analogy I'll think about is, for people, let's say you want to binge Netflix, right? So there's that completionist aspect as well. You want to consume an entire series of something. It's available to you. It's sitting right there. You just got to get through it. But you don't have to motivate yourself for that because you like it, you enjoy it. Can you find something interesting about the LSAT, or at least feign interest in it, fake it till you make it, and see, that passage topic was so ridiculous, it's absurd, or that logical reasoning topic was actually kind of weirdly hilarious in a certain way. So become a collector of LSAT trivia.
Okay.
There's this moment in almost every LSAT student's journey that nobody talks about enough. You've been studying for a while, you've done the drills, you've seen some improvement, but then you hit a wall and your score stalls. And suddenly your brain whispers, what if I peaked already? Let me just say it. That voice is a liar. When we work with students who've hit a plateau, like what Nina was describing, it's almost never because they're done improving. It's because they're right at the edge of a breakthrough and then their brain is throwing a last-minute tantrum. Here's what's actually happening. You've learned the basics and gotten faster, and you're not falling for the obvious trap answers anymore. But the questions that remain, those are the subtle ones, the ones that test your instincts, your pacing, your endurance, and your ability to stay calm under pressure. And those don't get solved with more review of the material. They get solved with strategy, with refinement, with self-trust. Let me give you a practical example. Let's say you score in the low 160s and can't seem to push into the 170s. Most students at this point start obsessing over obscure question types or redoing their weakest section 17 times in a row. But what actually moves the needle is getting 5% faster at the easy logical reasoning questions, or learning how to guess intelligently and move on without spiraling, and practicing holding your focus on the last passage in reading comp when your brain just wants a nap. And that's the work that nobody wants to do, because it's hard, it's not flashy, but it works. And the best part is, once you recognize this phase for what it is, a normal part of the path, not a permanent ceiling, it stops being scary. You stop asking, am I stuck? And you start asking, what's the small lever I haven't pulled yet? That's where the next breakthrough lies. So if you felt that creeping doubt lately, good. That means you care. Just don't confuse a plateau with a limit. The mountain gets steeper right before the summit, and that's not your cue to stop, that's your sign to keep going.
I became friends with a guy who used to write actual LSAT questions, and I've interviewed him on the YouTube channel a couple times, so you might take a look at that. He talks like an LSAT question, and they talk about the tricks and traps they lay in the questions. And there's a certain degree of fun to it where it's like, can I avoid falling for the tricks, and can I also appreciate the cleverness of what goes into making this, just like if you were to do an escape room or complete a crossword puzzle or something.
No, I like that suggestion. That's helpful. Like I find myself, it's one of those things where I always enjoy in the moment, like reading the passages. In reading comp 2, I think they can be really interesting. But yeah, it's just the act and discipline of like the saying, the heaviest weight at the gym is the door. It's the same thing with the LSAT. It's like the hardest thing to do is just like sit down and start. But then like once you're doing it, you get into the swing of it. At least in my experience, that's what it's been. It's like, it's hard for me to just start.
So I think that's the thing. I think there's this concept of don't break the chain, where you do a little something every single day to build the habit. And then by the end of 1 week, the habit's somewhat established. And by the end of 2 weeks, you can't not do it anymore. And so I wonder if you could apply that here where, yes, things will come up in life in the interim that might seem more pressing or seem a distraction. But if you could at least say to yourself, I will do one passage a day at minimum, or even just one question a day at minimum, it maintains the chain.
Yeah.
And then you'll feel a little antsy if you haven't done it yet that day. Like if it gets to noon that day and you still haven't done that yet, you'll start to worry and you'll be like, you know what? I need to pause other stuff and just take care of this. And that means like, I'm not going to see friends, or I'm not going to watch TV, or I'm not going to, look into mushrooms or whatever it is. And I'm just going to stick, I'm just going to stick with the LSAT because I need to get this done. And then you'll say, you know what? I'm here anyway. Might as well do a full section.
Right.
And then you just say, I'm going to do one more additional every single day than I did the previous day.
That's one.
And then before you know it, you'll have the momentum.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that I talked about with my tutor, was just like the one a day, like at least just like to do something. I have like an app where I can pull up questions and I'll literally like force myself to do it from my phone. Like if I'm like out and about, it maintains the habit, but then it also isn't like translating into real gains, or at least not efficiently maybe, or it's going to take a lot longer than 2.5 months. So
yeah, well, I think that's fair. I would say that the doing a question on your phone, like that might be sufficient to not break the chain, but it's not a substitute for real studying, right? Real studying is going to be like you're at a desk, head down. You've ideally got at least 30 minutes to have some focused, concentrated effort. And that's what's going to allow you to get the insights out of your review and make forward progress. But one thing that I wanted to make sure I covered here is around the motivation, is to not be too invested in getting things wrong. Right? Because that's the difference, I think, between the LSAT and athletics, is that with athletics, like every effort you put in is rewarded in some way, but and it's usually not negative. At least that's been my experience. But with the LSAT, it's either green or red. It's right or it's wrong. And then again, you feel dumb getting things wrong. And so if you were to instead look at it as every question I get wrong is a chance to learn something new.
Right.
And I'm getting them wrong now, so I'm not going to get them wrong on test day. And if you were only getting things right, it would mean that you were doing questions that were too easy.
That's true. It's a good mindset shift.
Let's get brutally honest for a second. You ever bomb the first section of a practice test and think to yourself, there goes the whole thing? We've all been there. That inner voice starts whispering, you're off today. You're not ready. Might as well just coast through the rest. But that voice is lying to you and it's costing you points. One bad section does not mean the whole test is ruined. In fact, you can bomb the first section and still get a top score if you don't sabotage the next 3 with negative self-talk. We see this over and over again with our students. The ones who are able to bounce back after a rough patch are the ones who've trained for it. They don't just prep their logic skills, they prep their emotional discipline. Here's how you do it. First, you want to reframe failure during the test. Instead of spiraling, say to yourself, that was the throwaway experimental section. I'm going to crush the next one. Then you don't look back, because you're not going to fix the last question or the last section by thinking about it during the next one. And train that reflex to bounce back. Literally simulate bad sections on purpose. Bomb one on a practice test and see how you respond. Make resilience your default. And just to be clear, this is not about pretending that everything is always going to be perfect. It's about deciding that you still get to show up at 100% even after you previously showed up at only 60%. The LSAT's like poker. You don't fold just because your last hand was garbage. You stay in the game, you play smart, and you win the next round. So the next time a section doesn't go your way, ask yourself, what would the version of me scoring 170 plus do next? Then do that thing. No self-pity, just focus, execution, and moving forward. Hey, real quick guys, if you're just getting started with your LSAT prep or you're looking for a quick refresher, you can grab your free easy LSAT cheat sheet linked below this video. It's jam-packed full of concrete, actionable tactics you can take and apply to your LSAT prep for a quick score boost, and it's 100% free, so you can grab your copy below. And now, back to the show. I think this was the biggest, most important topic for us to cover here, and if you can unlock this, everything else will follow. But I do think it would be good with a little bit of time remaining to look at that review document.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I thought this looked great. It's definitely one of the better ones I've seen here. We have question from the exam, question type, what you chose, the right answer, what went wrong. That's a really key column to have. So that's great. And then we have this is from the Socratic review method document. So you've got them here, but I would make each of these a separate column.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So we have here stimulus or passage, question stem, then the tempting wrong answer, what makes it ultimately wrong, the unappealing right answer, and what ultimately makes it correct. So there's a lot of things. This is like at least 6 different columns. And those are all stemming out of what you have here consolidated into column 5. So I would multiply what's going on in column 5 to get more specific. in other words. If you do that, you'll actually get those key takeaways. And that the key takeaways are what you need, right? So, I mean, if you're going to get 14, 15 points in the next 2.5 months. Just to summarize, I think a couple of key areas. One is this review document, fleshing it out more with the additional separate columns to get hyper specific on when something goes wrong, why does it go wrong? Was it in the stimulus, the question stem, or the choices? And then if it was in the choices, where in the choices? And then separately, if we can give you that obsessive compulsion to study and channel that in a positive way to help you want to go from 6 hours a week to 12 hours a week, or 15 or 18 maybe, if you can carve out 2 hours a day on weekdays and then a whole lot more on weekends for a short-term sacrifice in the next 2.5 months, giving you the time to apply this review, I think everything else will fall into place.
So biggest thing is just spend more time fleshing out my answer explanations, analyzing why I got an answer wrong. Just spend more time with the test in general. Just think about collecting the answers and just familiarizing myself with everything that's out there, essentially.
Exactly. I mean, like you said with your analogy of the heaviest weight is the door, right? If we can open that door and get you in there, and you can then put in the reps, put in the time, get the exposure to the patterns of the test. That's what's going to get you the results, because this test is a test of pattern recognition, and the score that you get is a function of the number of questions you complete multiplied by the quality or the depth of your review. It's a skills-based test. And so the only difference between me and you is that I've been doing this for far longer, so I've had more opportunity to see all the patterns and the methods of reasoning and the tricks and the traps. And so when I see a new question, I have the muscle memory of all the thousands of questions I've seen before multiple times. And so I can more easily bucket the new question into one of those old categories. Whereas for a student who's newer to this, they're interpreting it for the first time ever like it's a new vocabulary word, where I'm like, I can break that word down into its roots and its constituent parts and syllables and all that and understand it more quickly. So if you can get the reps, then you'll be down that path of the expert and someone who has the more deep experience.
So when it comes to the reviewing and explanations, sometimes I really will just not understand like where I'm going wrong. And that's when I have appreciated the private tutoring sessions, because then that's where I tend to notice the most. I'll have just misunderstood what exactly the author was saying in a specific answer choice, or I thought it was saying one thing, but it was really saying another thing. How do you keep that open mind? How do you avoid getting into situations where, you are just misunderstanding what they're saying? I'm like, should I work on my vocabulary? Probably a bit. It's probably just more exposure to, I'm sure probably helps.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think what you're asking here in part is, how do I avoid getting burned? How do I avoid making assumptions? How do I avoid falling for the tricks and reading beyond what is literally written there in the text? Right. So I always think about Charlie Brown and Lucy in the football, where she pulls the football away from him the last second and he tries to kick it and falls over every single time. We don't want to be like Charlie Brown. We want to learn from our mistakes. We get fooled once, we don't get fooled again. And so when you engage in this review process, you're honing in on exactly which tricks and traps you were most likely to fall for, or maybe you did fall for them. And by emphasizing the key takeaways and insights during your review, you become less likely to fall for that same mistake again. And so part of it is going deeper on the review process. Another part of it is, of course, you talk it over with your coach during your sessions. You join the live classes when you can to get additional at-bats, to have a coach and the other students as well talk through their biggest mistakes. And so in part, you'll see what other people fall for that you don't, and you'll see what you do fall for that they don't. And so that might give you some additional insights in terms of what are the specific things I want to look for. Two big ones in logical reasoning are going to be the degree of certainty in the conclusion. So that's always versus never versus sometimes versus the majority of the time. Another big one is the category of things they're discussing, like all people versus some people versus some people who study for the LSAT. We're narrowing the scope of who we're talking about. And so a lot of the time, the trick is they're being a little more vague than we think they are. And so we assume with more certainty, typically. It's a flaw of the human mind that we look for certainty when there's actually a lot more ambiguity. And so recognizing the ambiguity, being comfortable with the ambiguity, understanding that we cannot assume or infer as much as we might like to. And of course, they're playing tricks of language to lead us down a path to assume more than we should. And so, again, part of the exposure and the pattern recognition is seeing all the different ways they can burn us, and then getting laser focused on the small nuances of the language and slowing down, reading the stimulus or the passage as thoroughly as you can before going on to the choices, making sure that you thoroughly understand it.
Right. Yeah, I notice I do like a lot of, I have to slow down because I will I notice that happens a lot. Like the stimulus will talk about one particular group, and then an answer choice will be like, it'll sound great, but it mentioned a different group, not like the group that was talked about in the stimulus. And so like it's talking about candidates and this one said members. It's not the same thing. But I would like read it so quickly and like think like that was like that it agreed with the stimulus when it was talking about something different. So yeah, that's helpful.
Let me say something that might feel counterintuitive. It's okay not to know, especially on a test like the LSAT that is designed to make you feel like you don't know. The LSAT thrives on ambiguity. Sometimes you're halfway through a logical reasoning question or the third paragraph of a reading comp passage and your brain just goes blank. And that's when most students panic. They'll reread the stimulus 5 times. They'll start highlighting and they'll doubt their gut instincts. And boom, there goes 4 minutes and their confidence. The better move is don't even fight the fog. Just move on. And this is not about giving up. It's about preserving your momentum. You can always come back. And 9 times out of 10, when you do, your brain has quietly been working on the problem in the background and you see it again with a fresh perspective. Suddenly, it just makes sense, like it's magic. But it isn't magic, it's a strategy. And so we teach our students this exact move as part of LSAT time management discipline. It's not about finishing every question in order, it's about maximizing the points you can gain. So the next time your brain locks up, here's what you want to do. Take one stab at it with your best effort. If you can't get it after that, flag it, move on, and circle back when your mind is clearer. Test day is not a pop quiz on how smart you are. It's a performance. What separates top scorers isn't that they always know the answer, it's that they know what to do when they don't know the answer. Before we sign off, Nina, what would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
My biggest insight is knowing that I need to put in more work, amping up that discipline, because I'm not naive to the fact that I know there's more people out there who are dedicating every free moment of theirs to LSAT prep, and I think I'm going to need to figure out how to channel my motivation a bit more. That's my biggest takeaway.
Awesome. All right, well, let's make it happen. We'll check in a week, see how you're doing. If you have any questions in the meantime, just shoot me an email or a text and I'll be happy to help.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate your time.
Of course. Have a good one, Nina.
You too. Bye.